Welcome to Glitch Gaming. Today I'm making a different type of video in which I will be dissecting one of my favorite video games of all time. This is a video I've wanted to make for quite a while now, as I haven't seen anyone cover this topic before. Everyone seems to have their own opinions and theories on what took place aboard the Ark in the ending chapters of both the hero and dark sides of the story. Some people believe the hero ending took place. Sonic Wicca thinks the f***ing dark ending took place, and others just aren't sure what to think. Well, today, I'm gonna put all the theories to rest and provide factual proof that in fact, both endings took place, and that Sonic actually beat Shadow aboard the Ark in their final battle. Ooh, bring on the Shadow fanboy hate. Now, as a disclaimer, this analysis pertains to the fight in the video game, not the fight in Sonic X, which is loosely based on the same story. Now, this is also not an opinion-based video. This is more of an analytical view on the story in the video game. More specifically, the juncture in which Sonic and Shadow fought in the Space Colony Ark at the ends of both the hero and dark stories. To clarify, we're looking at the game's narrative structure, its plot, not its gameplay. The plot is the order of events that are actually taking place in the story, whereas the gameplay serves as an interactive bridge to get the player from point A to point B in the story. I'm not here to give my biased opinion on which character I think is stronger, although Sonic would beat the living shit, but instead dissect the plot. The plot of Sonic Adventure 2 is interesting and follows the same type of storytelling as the first game. The story is actually linear, but we follow the point of view of both the good guys and the bad guys, however in relative time. The player is never playing a what-if moment when playing through the story with either the heroes or villains. When we branch off to another character or the other team, we are just seeing their point of view in the same timeline in which everything is taking place in the narrative. This is important to understand because when the player plays either the hero side or dark side of the story and comes across a boss battle with an opposing character from the other team, the outcome of the battle is not determined by which character the player won with. Let me put this into perspective. When Tails and Eggman first fight on Prison Island, the following cutscene after the battle is different depending on which side you're playing as. If you're playing as Tails and beat Eggman, you're presented with the true scene that follows immediately after the battle. I call this the true outcome because this is the actual result of the battle between Tails and Eggman, regardless of which team you're playing as. Even if you beat Tails as Eggman, this is the true result or true outcome of the battle from the narrative perspective. And if you beat Tails as Eggman on the dark side, you're presented with a cutaway to another scene, and not the immediate moment after the battle. If the game didn't break up its cutscenes by making you play through the game twice, and instead put all the cutscenes together as one movie, this would be the order of events.
Hey, how's that?
This time I'll let you go, but the next time we meet, you won't be so lucky.
I'm in position, Doctor. Tell me when.
There's been an unexpected delay on my end. There's no more time to waste. Set the timer for 15 minutes. Let's go, Rube.
5 minutes should be plenty. Here I go.
Make sense yet? From a gameplay perspective, beating Eggman as Tails is the canon fight, whereas if you beat Tails as Eggman, you instead get the cutaway scene. When Tails and Eggman have their final fight aboard the Ark, regardless of which character you win with, the player is presented with a cutaway scene. If Eggman wins, we are put into Shadow's perspective when he watched Sonic's capsule blow up. But if Tails wins, we get the cutscene of Sonic warping to Knuckles. Note the time codes on each cutscene following the battle. However, only on the hero side do we actually cut back to the result of the fight between Tails and Eggman, where Tails literally says,
Sonic, I did it.
and Eggman inches towards the final yellow Chaos Emerald, which is the same Chaos Emerald he installs in the Eclipse Cannon at the end of the Dark story. Do you see what's happening yet? The game is simply moving around in time. The cutscenes that the player is awarded with after defeating a boss or completing a level isn't always the immediate moment after the boss battle or level. The game actually rewards the player with different story progression details, meaning that even though you may beat Tails as Eggman, the game just takes you to a different scene or point in time in the narrative to make the player feel gratified for completing something. There is, in fact, no what-if scenes anywhere in this game, because each scene we see takes place in a different juncture of time. Finally, in the last battle between Sonic and Shadow, there is in fact a winner. Depending what story you're playing, the following cutscene at the end of the battle is different. If you win as Shadow, the preceding cutscene is Eggman adding the final Chaos Emerald to his his Eclipse Cannon, and then the credits. But how did he get that Chaos Emerald? He didn't beat Tails for it. The game does a great job letting the player think that if they only play the dark story. However, if you win as Sonic, you're presented with a cutscene in which shows Sonic on a stripper pole disabling the cannon. Both endings are meant to give the player a sense of accomplishment for beating each story's final boss. But from a narrative perspective, these events actually go in order. It's implied that Sonic beat Shadow aboard the Ark because how else would he have been able to accomplish his mission to stop the Death Star? Do you think him and Shadow had a friendly chat about the matter? No. Sonic beat the living out of Shadow. But without directly showing it, the game uses cross-cutting, a common storytelling technique used in movies. It cuts away from the action in one scene to an entirely different scene, and then back to the scene prior. We see this a lot in Star Wars films where the movie is going back and forth between what the good guys are doing and what the bad guys are up to. The game also uses the classic implied scene technique to get around its unique way of storytelling. This is where we see two characters going to fight each other, then we cut away to another scene, then we cut back to the result of the fight without actually having to see the fight itself, therefore making the outcome implied by only showing the end result of the fight. With all this jumping around between different scenes, perspectives, and points in time, you'd think Quentin Tarantino directed this. Here's how this whole sequence would play out as a movie if the cutscenes were put into order.
Game over, Shadow!
Sonic, I did it!
Awesome job, Tails!
Sonic!
Look outside!
This completes my plan to take over the world. Now begins the glorious era of the Empire of Eggman. What's going on? Why doesn't the cannon fire? What's happening here?
When you win as Shadow on the Ark, you're not getting the immediate scene after that fight. Instead, the player is given the cutscene in which Eggman takes the final Chaos Emerald after being beaten by Tails and puts it into the Eclipse Cannon. The game just gives us new information based on what side we're playing as and not changing the result of the story based on our actions. It's well thought out by the developers because they give the players a unique sense of accomplishment by completing levels or defeating bosses in each story, but still manage to tell their story in a linear way, meaning there are no alternative endings or branching paths. The story follows a singular path, but the payoffs we get aren't always the result of our direct actions. To top it all off, we see Sonic return to the Ark after defeating Shadow and stopping the Eclipse cannon from firing in the last story. We don't see Shadow at all until after the drama goes down and you play as all the characters through 10 minutes of frustration and depression, which is probably how Shadow feels in the scene after getting his ass whooped by the greatest head. Finally, to further validate my argument, let's look at a few things. After defeating Shadow with Sonic, we are put into 1 minute and 33 seconds before the cannon fires. We get a whole moment where Tails griefs over Sonic and turns his back on Eggman, who now has the final Chaos Emerald. Then, if we switch over to the Dark Side cutscene that follows after the Sonic vs. Shadow fight, the countdown is 40 seconds before the cannon fires. This means Eggman had time to grab the Chaos Emerald and install it just before Sonic stopped the cannon from firing, which also causes Gerald's scene in the last story because Eggman added all 7 Chaos Emeralds, which is also what Gerald wanted to happen. Mind you, the cannon was already set to fire by Eggman, which it did, but Sonic stopped it. And then Gerald's message plays in the last story simply because Eggman added that 7th Chaos Emerald. It's a little weird, I know, but it allows for both events to happen and player accomplishment to be gained after beating each individual story. And if you're still not buying into this, look at how Eggman handles himself in this scene. He looks a little bit stiff and even straightens out his back, as if he just got done getting his butt whooped. That animation wasn't put in there by accident.
There has to be. I know that people fight over the most trivial things. Some people may be selfish, like the professor said. But they're basically good if they try their best and never give up on their wishes. They always have a reason.
While some
to be
people may
happy.
say the game's
That's why you
theme
should
is about
help them out.
forgiveness and sacrifice,
Maybe there's a good thing.
I believe the game is also about perspective. The player doesn't get the whole story unless he or she plays through both sides. Only then do we get both sides of the narrative and learn new bits of information regarding all the details in the story. We learn the motivations of each character, their individual goals, and how they interact with each other. The game doesn't give us every piece of the puzzle if we play through the game as just the heroes. We don't sympathize with Shadow as much unless we play the Dark story and learn why he's doing what he does, despite being the bad guy. We think Rouge is an evil, conniving, two-dimensional but learn she in fact has her own goals and motives. It's as if the game designers are trying to teach us something. Perhaps we, as human beings, should look at life, events, and people with a little more care in the finer details. Instead of shrugging people and their actions off at face value when we don't agree with them, instead we should try to understand them. And then disagree with their false, pretentious, fanboy bias bullshit. Here's looking at you, Sonic Wikia.